Okay, Tim, I'm back. I got
All right.
unexpectedly barred.
Yeah, sorry, I clicked the wrong button, but you are live now, and Leslie's about to come in.
I'm still alive? Good.
We are live, as in
We're
streaming.
live. All right. There's Leslie. Hi, Leslie. Okay, sorry. Welcome to the Annapolis Historic Preservation Commission meeting for 9th of May, 2023. Quorum being present, the meeting shall come to order. The commission operates pursuant to the land use article of the annotated code of the state of Maryland. Local authority for the commission is derived from Municipal Code of the City of Annapolis, Chapter 21, Section 56. The purpose of the HPC is to preserve sites, structures, and districts of historic, cultural, archaeological, and architectural significance. Requirements for serving on the commission are detailed in Chapter 21, Section 8.06. The HPC operates pursuant to the State of Maryland Open Meeting Act, and therefore no pending application shall be discussed between or among commissioners outside the public hearing. Okay, that's the first thing on the agenda. Next on the agenda is a roll call. I am Tim Leahy. I am the chair. Bobby Collins is our vice chair.
Here.
Tim Finch.
Here.
Will Scott.
Present.
Bill Williams.
Here.
And Leslie Xavier.
Here.
And I don't see John Tower yet. Is he here?
He's about to come in.
Okay, super. Our recorder is Kimberly Consoli. And I see Jackie Rouse is joining us as well from Planning and Zoning.
John should be here momentarily. I
All
was
right.
just on the phone with him, and I know he
Yes, I was
remembers
talking about it.
the meeting.
Yeah, I talked to him a few minutes ago, and I'm pretty sure he'll be
I
in.
can text him and say he needs to get with
That's
it.
okay. All right, let me go to our agenda. I think next on our agenda is going to be announcements, which we usually ask John about. So we might postpone that just for a minute.
There's John.
There's John. All right, we'll just give John a second to come in here.
So,
Can you hear that?
hear me?
Hello, John.
Technology is our friend until you really need it to be your friend, and then every once in a while it misbehaves.
Exactly.
So I guess the biggest small announcement is that the lights have come down on Federal House.
Good, thank you.
And I can't believe how long it took, but it was actually the intervention of the landlord who spoke to the tenant, who is Federal House, and said, take them off. And the same is true for Aqua Al Due at the top of Main Street. So working with the tenants wasn't immediately successful. Working with the landlords definitely got a faster response. Just saying.
Yeah. Yeah, and this has been an ongoing issue, and thank you for following up on it. The lights are deemed to have an adverse impact on a historic structure, and actually have views from the adverse impact on views from the water. So that's why we are pursuing this. So they're not consistent with guidelines. That's why we're pursuing this. They were temporary in nature for the holidays, which is fine, but that's 3 months.
Well, but they were on Federal House in May too.
They're well past the temporary concept. Yeah.
Right. And we had other Christmas decorations still up and still in operation, including Snowflake Alley, which just came down, I guess, a few days ago. So it's like Christmas every day. Let's see, other announcements. Maynard Burgess House is at its last punch list items. And there will be an organized, well, at least what I'm hoping for is an event where those who are related to either the Maynard or the Burgess families will be able to visit the house and look at it and see that the city has taken good care of their family and cultural asset. Next thing is that I located some archaeological artifacts from the houses, and I want to see if I can get them back to the house, either on loan temporarily or permanently. And I think those are the announcements. Besides the fact that HPC is almost up to 130 applications for this year.
Wow.
Which is a lot. So a lot of people, I guess, even though they have trouble with the new permit system, they've persevered, and it might be easier for them to file permits remotely than it is for them to come downtown to do it. So maybe that accounts for why we have more. But such is the case. Little update on Gloucester Muse, met with a number of the residents, David Gerald, people from Public Works, and it was agreed that a set of steps would be installed near what I'm calling the northwest facade of the more northerly facade of the garage. The Gloucester Muse will stay open. It just slightly altered with a minor 20-inch retaining wall to compensate for the differences in elevation between what was required for the ADA compliance of the sidewalk at the Gorman Street garage and where Gloucester Muse was. So those are some things. I have some spicy things, but I'll just send it out in an email later.
You're teasing us, John.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's all about, how well, kids, the new kid on the block can play in the sandbox. And the answer is not well at all.
Would this be some young men that have made attempted to make their business mark on our community?
Actually, no. And I think I know who you might be alluding to, but the truth is that those two young men have decided to follow the guidelines and the best practices. At least this is what I'm seeing, and they absolutely see the benefit in tax credits, because who wouldn't?
Yeah.
So that is not one of my worries. It's and it's refreshing. So I appreciated it.
Well, Mr. Chairman, let's do our business so we can get to the juicy bits.
Oh no,
we can talk about it under administrative business, perhaps, or other business. All right. Next on the agenda is approval of minutes. I'm toggling back and forth on an unfamiliar computer here, so give me a second. I think we have two.
April 11th.
Where is it? Again, I apologize. Okay. April 11th. Are there any comments or questions on April 11th? I think Kevin's not here, but was someone else missing from that one? I don't have it in front of me.
It says Bill Williams was absent.
Okay, good. So
Well,
Bill, you can
remember not
abstain.
being there.
You can abstain from
abstain.
this,
I
but
abstain.
can I hear, if there are no comments, can I have a motion for April 11th?
I move we approve the minutes for April 11th.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Oppose and abstain for Bill. Okay, then April 27th, 2023. Any changes, questions, comments? Okay, hearing none, could I have a motion, please?
I move we approve the minutes for April 27th.
All in
Second.
favor? Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Okay. Great. Next on the agenda is new violations or status of active violations. Over to you, John.
I had the manager at Buddy's reach out for ways to move forward to alleviate the notice of violation that was received for a number of sidewalk sandwich boards that were out. And then also the lights on the front of the building, removing those. And so that was good. I'm, always happy to work with them. Lots of the parklet applications coming in. So everyone prepare yourself for that visual enhancement of Main Street. Those white plastic barriers, all the lovely things that go with it. But the other, I put in a request for one restaurant to take out its plastic chairs, and am holding the approval for its parklet until it does so, and we'll see how that goes.
Okay. Speaking of that, is the city planning any enhancements on Main Street in terms of the bump outs that have been proposed about a year ago? Kind of, do you remember what I'm talking about? The additional bump outs that were being proposed?
Being considered, yeah.
Yeah, but nothing more on that.
No.
Okay, so these are just summertime dining with the white, hopefully all white, not orange and white.
Well, some restaurants have proposed alternative barriers, but we'll see how it all comes together. It is supposed to be an enhancement,
Right.
So that's what I'm hoping for.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments from commissioners on violations or outstanding violations? All right. Hearing none. Next on our agenda is the consent docket. The consent docket is a procedure designed to expedite applications before the commission. In order to be considered, the application must have received a recommendation for approval from the city staff and any technical advisors. Also, there needs to be no public opposition to the application. If the application is approved on consent docket, the applicant does not need to testify further, but must still provide the necessary permits. I didn't poll the commissioners, but before the meeting, I apologize, but I would propose that 44 West Street be placed on the consent docket. Do I have concurrence on that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. In that case, I'll take a motion for 44 West Street to be placed on the consent docket.
I move that
There were no conditions placed on the application.
I move that we approve the application for 44 West Street.
I second.
Leslie beat me.
I'm sorry.
Okay, Leslie.
Can someone retrieve my?
Yes, but did they approve, or did they vote?
It's okay. We were just about to vote.
Just seconded the vote, yeah.
That was Grace. She votes yes. So yes. Did I hear a motion?
Yes, we motioned and we
Second.
seconded it. So
Okay,
we're
all in
ready.
favor?
Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? No, all abstain? All right. The motion passes So for those folks who are improving the kitchen on the rear of the restaurant, that your application's approved, and please go forward and good luck.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, was there an abstention on that vote or was it?
No.
No, okay.
No, I don't think so. I think it's all approved.
All approved, all in favor.
Yes. Okay. Okie dokie. Next on our agenda, I believe, is Church Circle pre-application. And so I think I saw someone from Hammond Wilson earlier who's going to be presenting tonight.
I'm promoting them now.
All right, thanks. Okay.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello, I see Andy's there. Hello, Leo.
Hi.
And Christopher Frank. All right, this is a pre-application for an exciting project on my favorite building on Church Circle. It is a pre-application. I just want you to acknowledge that this is a courtesy extended to applicants. No comments should be taken as approval or disapproval, and we will just be giving you feedback in terms of the feasibility of your proposed design. Do you understand that?
We understand.
Okay, great. All right, so Leo, who's leading the charge here tonight?
John, so I think I'll go ahead and take the lead on this for us this evening.
Okay.
We'll try and move through it quickly and make sure we make good use of your time and show you what we're thinking about and maybe get some initial feedback so we can move forward with further design work so we can see if we can get something going here.
Okay. You have the floor.
Great, thank you. So here with me tonight, I have Chris Frank, who's involved in the project on the design side, and Andrew Fishback. And both of those people have worked with me to put together the presentation and on the design work here. And I'll note that they met with John over on the site, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, to kind of just walk through some initial thoughts and from John and talk about, you know, what works and what doesn't work there. So do I have that timing right, John, about 2 weeks ago?
Yes.
Great, great. So Andrew's driving the slide projector, so you'll hear me, slide projector, good Lord. You'll hear me ask him to move forward when we need to. So the project we're talking about is 10/14 Church Circle, and this is the old Bank of America building. And we all know at this point, Bank of America no longer occupies that space. The ownership has since transferred to Kelly Investment Group. And what they'd like to do is take that building and repurpose it from the existing bank use in a small office on the first floor to offices on the first floor, offices on the upper level, and then we'd like to add some space on the roof. Right now, it's hidden behind a very tall mansard, not dissimilar from the building at 18 Church, where Aqua is right now. And the idea is to try and make sure that we can set up a building that will function for the applicant, but also we think there's an opportunity to change the character of the building from what you see today to a new concept we put together. So let's go to the next slide. So we had a survey done, and this building is interesting. It's one of the few in town where the building overhangs what's really kind of a public walk space along Church Circle. And it's interesting to note that there's kind of the property line bifurcates the sidewalk area. Some of it exists outside of that covered walkway, but the majority of it is space for pedestrians to proceed along Church Circle between Duke of Gloucester and South Street. There are really 4 entry points in the building. You can see where the stairs are. And then you can see there's an actual drive lane that goes to the lower level that comes off South Street with parking below. I think there's about 15 spaces down below. Next slide. So here's what we have today. The building is, it's there. I don't know what else to say about it other than it's there. I think it was an attempt when it was built in the 70s. I think it's 1971, according to SDAT, to abide by the kind of the massing requirements for the Historic District Commission or the Historic Preservation Commission guidelines for work in this part of town. So you see the mansard roof that carries along and is referenced in some of the approvals or some of the documents for guidelines. It really doesn't say much that speaks to historic character to me, but things change over time and our perceptions of what's appropriate change. So the hope is we can do a little better job, perhaps. Next slide. We just have a few images of the building. Here you can see the covered walkway and, the brick components and then the bronze colored mansard roof that kind of overhangs that edge. And the most jarring component of this for me is really the concrete elements that show up as the kind of the panels, the spandrel panels that go around the building. I'm not sure how that ties into architectural character, but that's what we have. Another shot. This one isn't one that you probably don't see very often, but you can see where the entry on South Street goes into the building. And, this thing kind of follows the streetscape and then kind of truncates pretty abruptly where the adjacent parcel takes over. Next. The back of the building.
Not notable.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's much to preserve there other than maybe the tree perhaps. Next. This is just context for you guys. So we start where we always start, and that is kind of, well, what was here before what we see today? And so you can see the courthouse, of course, on Church Circle, which we're all familiar with. And then at one point there was kind of a grouping of buildings there. The D, we believe, is for dwellings in there.
That's correct.
And then we've got an office in the center and then another office on the corner on South, all of which has since gone away. Next.
Yeah.
So again, just trying to understand what was going on over there. This is a little bit difficult to see only because of the angle that was available from the photograph in 1892. It does, however, show some of the smaller buildings on the site. Next. And again, here you can start to get a sense, it's a little different angle in 1937 that shows the 2- and 3-story structures that were on that site and also some of the trees that have since gone away. Next. Then finally, a little closer shot here from 59. And you can see how, again, those buildings were still there at that point. Next. So we start to look around at other buildings that have a bit of scale to them and how they've been handled in the historic district. And of course, we all know the courthouse building addition in the back there. This is the view from Franklin Street. And we're just trying to get a sense of like what buildings of what we see as perhaps similar in scale or larger scale buildings have been handled. And here, we see the brick again, of course, which makes a lot of sense. The established cornice is prominent on these. And we thought it was interesting that there were 3rd and 4th story components that push back beyond that cornice. But the idea is that I believe was that you would start to experience the building as a bit smaller scale, even though there are taller elements on that site.
Yeah, breaking up the mass.
And they did a nice job breaking up the mass there. And then, this is the other component of it with the residential tower on it. And so this is the Acton Landing condominium building. Next. This one is not I don't believe is the best kind of, well, it's just a large structure, right? It's pretty big, but given the hospital site, it made sense at that point. So the Acton Landing condos. Now, this was interesting to me, the Franklin Street building at 51. This was a repurposed building, not dissimilar in terms of what we were hoping to do, repurposing our building. But here, it was essentially a lot of parking and some office space converted into residential uses. And again, there was an attempt to kind of separate the upper level from the lower levels, and the fenestration was changed a bit. It seems like it worked out pretty well for the site. It seems nice to me. And next.
And that one had a mansard roof.
Yeah, I put that in here, John.
There's
'cause
the
I was
mansard
like,
roof tacked
okay.
onto it.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of the hotel, right? Where, there's a mansard roof for some reason. That was considered a good choice at some time in the history of reviews. And, again, I think the second one is actually a good deal better than the first.
Yeah.
We picked a couple other buildings just to look at. We thought this one was interesting to me because the Starbucks was, of course, it was a more modern structure before it was rebuilt. But I thought the fenestration was curious because there's a lot of big panels in there. And one part of me says, well, these big glass panels, perhaps are a pretty serious departure from the fenestration patterns on the adjacent buildings, but somehow it seems to work. It's kind of mitigating between upper and lower pieces. It goes against a mansard, sure, but the other buildings seem to work pretty well as well, even the Musto store. So next. Then just looking at what's happening in town today. Again, we have the parking structure that's going to open next month, which is exciting to all of us. This is a mix of different things. This has kind of, the brick panels, and then it has the more modern kind of metal screening that'll go in place in some sections of that, again, to break up the length of the building. I think that's pretty effective. But at the same time, there's a little bit of monotony on that side. Now, given its location and its use, I think it's a strong solution, but I think ours is more prominent and it faces, difficult challenges. I don't think this type of approach works for us. Next. Then we looked at some older buildings that had been repurposed. Here we have the old theater on State Circle. I think this building was handled really well, and the adaptive reuse works nicely. I know there's a nice residential component on the upper level, which has great views of the harbor. I don't know if you've ever been in there. I know I have and was astounded by the view. But, this was tastefully done. It's got an established base and a cornice line, again, that's strong. And it wasn't a departure from the original form and also from the fenestration. It's a little bit different, but not a lot. I love this one because it's when Jaws was there, which it's one of my favorite movies. So I thought that was a funny picture. And just an older one that we found. I can't remember what year this was. I think it predates the prior one, judging from the cars, of course. And people being dressed to go to the movies is nice. So we move into the existing floor plan, and as we all know, this was the bank. We don't have a lot of context here, but you can see the pilasters or the piers that hold it up along Church Circle there, the covered walkway, and how the bank arranged inside with the primary banking floor located on the right side of the slide, and then the office space on the left. Next, and then the upper level was set up as again traditional bank office space with open space for kind of a pool of workers on the left side of the slide, and then offices surrounding the perimeter and filling in the interior. Next, and then the rooftop, and here we can see where the entire structure is wrapped with this mansard roof, and then there's also a very large equipment penthouse up there. In our plan, that piece becomes obsolete because the systems are wholly different. This was set up with a single kind of 4-pipe system and a big boiler up there. And that's not what we're intending to keep in place. It's beyond its serviceable life, I would say. Next. So let's look at the section of this building. What we've got today is in front of you on the screen now, and you can see that, it's got the standard mansard component on it, and then right behind it is the open space. You can see that it's set forward, and then even in the lower where the pedestrian is shown standing there, there's another kind of beveled brick piece. Really very, that in and of itself is a really kind of more modern or of that time, 71 solution to kind of handling the base of the building. Not great in my opinion. I think it really, well, it's less successful than I'd like it to be. So this is where we're starting. Next.
I don't think brutalism is protected
Yeah.
even if it's covered with brick.
Well, you know, it's funny. When people put these diagrams together for, you know, kind of guidance, this looks like it's completely believable as the right solution in the context of, you know, the sketch above. So what we know is that you're set for in height district 2, your cornice height wants to be at 28, and then your maximum building height is 38. And so the mansard was way many people handled it at that time. And they still do today. I mean, we see that in buildings, you know, like the Park Place development and all of that. And again, you know, it's that's a different scale, but the idea is the same. Next. So what our client wants to do is they would like to repurpose the bank floor with office space for their tenant, SmartLink, that takes up the majority of the space towards South Street. And then there's going to be we don't think we need all that space. So we've got tenant space that faces Church Circle and Duke of Gloucester. And that's a nice spot, we believe, for a small cafe or restaurant there. We think that would be nice to have a little more activity on the street. Again, we're going to have to look at how we open that up to the street. Right now, it's just a diagram, but we're still working through how this all works three-dimensionally. But this is the concept anyway. And then on the second floor for this building, we've just rearranged the office space in there. We had a plan to do it a little differently, and really the inside function is less important to us as we review what we're trying to do. But you know, this is the intent, is to have office space up there. And then let's go to the next one, Andrew. So here's what we're thinking. You know, we've got, of course, the mansard, which I've dashed in blue up there. We've seen these other examples where we've moved away from the mansard, but still pulled back that upper level facade from the face so that the cornice height, you know, that piece is established as a contextual element, but rather than go with kind of the blank facade of the mansard at the top, we thought it would be nice if we pull that back and then add some usable space on the upper level. And again, this is part of trying to provide a financially viable program for our client while still respecting the guidelines for the district. So, so this is where we're headed with it. And of course, you can see I've dashed in the piece I want to take out at the bottom too, and we'll show you how that comes together three-dimensionally in just a minute. Next. So that third floor piece that you could see in this section, what we're showing up there is what we believe is space that would be adequate for 2 small apartments up there, residential units, with that all pulled back a good distance to comply with the kind of that 45-degree angle that comes back from the building face. And again, rather than have that be mansard roof with unusable elements underneath of it, we pull the wall back and provide outdoor terrace space up there. It's not intended for commercial use at this point. It's really intended just for use by the people who are living in those residential units. So next one, that's good, Andrew. So we put together elevation drawings, and these are a little bit hard to read, as they always are. This is looking from Church Circle directly towards the long elevation of it, with the left and right sides splayed back as they do, you know, to follow the streets on Duke and South. And so before we flip from this, you know, again, the things that bother me about it, you know, I really dislike the roof because it doesn't really add much character to it. And the brick pieces are or the masonry pieces, the concrete pieces are a bit jarring. So, and the window patterns are, definitely, there's really nothing that references, it just as big plate glass pieces. And I think, maybe we could do better. So next slide. So again, you'll see these in perspective in just a second, but I think it's always good to start with the base drawings and then move into that. So what we've tried to do here is eliminate to the greatest extent practical the concrete pieces on the building while still preserving the building's form. Doing it over again, I'd probably pull all of this back without the covered walkway and figure out how to make that work. But, we don't want to take the building down because there's really, it's still healthy. So we went back in and dropped the window panels down a little bit, tried to break them up with smaller panes of glass with kind of a clear story component, a heavier strike between the clear stories above the 8-foot mark for the windows and doors. And then, change that so it feels a little bit less modern, maybe just a little bit more, little bit older kind of look to it. I'm not sure that it looks that old, but I think it's an improvement. And then rather than the mansard at the top, we're proposing to remove that and push our piece back and do that as a secondary element. We've done this same type of approach in a couple of buildings over the course of our time here. One that's kind of similar to that is how we handled the rooftop addition for the rec center, where the 3rd floor is space we're using now, but it's not intended to look like the rest of the building. It's intended to look like a separate type of architecture on top. What it does is by pulling that back, it allows us to get that open space. I think the building looks less massive. We'll see it in the perspectives and get maybe some green stuff up on that roof there, which would be quite nice. Next. So again, elevation from Duke of Gloucester with the curved element along the circle kind of cascading back around. Next. And here you get a sense of what we think might be a little bit of a softer feel for the building with kind of a more kind of similar treatment of that spandrel panel that goes around, taking that all back to brick. We do have a cornice that's proposed as something of a lighter material, and that picks up on what we've seen in some of the other buildings. Almost everyone we looked at, the cornice is handled a bit differently just because the brick doesn't corbel out far enough to make that piece look, like it does in so many other buildings in town. Next. Again, this is from the end that faces South Street. Next. And then here's how we're planning to kind of change that a little bit. In this case, it was a little bit hard to pull those angled panels back on the 1st floor, but I'm not giving up on that yet. I'd really like to kind of maybe see if I can move those around a bit so we don't have those deep wells on that side, but we'll see if we can do that. Next, so the perspectives are really the easiest ones to get a sense of it. The building doesn't look this crisp in real life, but it's a representation to give you an idea of what we're seeing. And the context is helpful because you can see the other buildings that surround it in just a little bit of form. So it is a pretty prominent view of this building as you come around the circle. It is the piece you see. It always feels bigger than this to me when I'm near it, but I think it's perhaps because by the time I'm looking up, I'm closer to it. Next. And so here's what we're thinking about trying to do. Again, the idea here is to take away the secondary masonry elements, change the window, the fenestration patterns a bit, so that we can get a little bit better balance with the size of the building. The openings are still quite large, but they're broken up in I think a little bit more successful way. And we have again the heavy strike where the clear story windows sit above the window and door assemblies, and you can see that the upper portion is pulled back. From this perspective, it actually appears like it's pulled back quite a bit, and in fact it is. But again, the intent here was to kind of change your perception of it a little bit from a two-story with a mansard to a two-story with a piece that's pushed back on it. Next. Shot from in front of the bank building, or now Aqua. You can see kind of a little more context from this side. But again, that third floor element, I think, is more successful just because it clips those corners, particularly as it's closer to the courthouse. I think, the availability to, notch that back, and introduce a little bit of green space and change the sky plane is working pretty well. And I like the fact that while we have the covered walkway, it just seems like, just softening all of that a little bit with some plant materials and some signage and lighting and some canopy stuff would help soften that a little bit and kind of tie the building together. And it's almost like it's in some ways less noticeable than it was before. Next. So again, we were looking at things like this. We thought that pieces of this worked pretty well. I liked the window patterns I saw here. I liked the cornice piece that's got a nice established component to it. And I like the way it cascaded back from that strike at the 28-foot level. These guys, I don't think were subject to the rigorous HPC review because of the ownership of the parcel and the building. But nonetheless, it works pretty well.
Actually, I remember this. It went through. They complied and went through a whole series of design reviews. And
Yeah.
just to correct.
Planning Commission worked them over pretty well too.
Oh, yeah.
So, but I agree with you. The takeaway is that it's a successful design.
Yeah, I would agree. And then we have the Acton's Landing component, which is another one there. Again, they work to cascade some of the taller components back. They have larger openings in here, but there's a better blend between the masonry and the holes in it for the fenestration. So yeah, I mean, these are solutions that gave us a couple lessons we thought were useful. Next. Again, trying to do the same thing here, just a different view of it. I'm not too sure I like the stripes, but that's okay. And then finally, we come back to this building. And again, this is trying to do the same thing, dumping the mansard and going to a piece. Again, you could argue that the top floor could be pushed back, but in this case, because of the location of the building, it seems appropriate to me. And in my opinion, quite successful adaptive reuse, working with what they had. And, that upper floor at that size really helps them make the building work from a performance standpoint financially. Again, going back to what we saw, these are just the other context images. So again, this is kind of like what we were looking at and trying to decide if we had a good approach. This is a little closer shot of it. And this is where we are so far. We're still doing research. We're still trying to figure out where we want to take our clues from. The context is very difficult because it's not in any way contextual in my mind. So I'm trying to make a building that was sort of an object building when it was originally designed, and make it a little more background and a little bit more friendly, and maybe look a little bit less like a traditional office building by picking up some modest changes in materials and fenestration patterns and in the general massing. So that's what we have for you tonight. I hope you can appreciate kind of the general approach that we're taking, and look forward to hearing some comments and having some discussion about opportunities and challenges. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you guys. Well, first I'll ask my team, did I miss anything, you guys?
No, as
I think
usual,
you covered
pretty
everything.
well presented.
Great. Well, thanks.
I usually miss one or two things, so thanks for checking me, guys.
All right. Well, thanks. So thoughts, we just around the among commissioners and with John, maybe John, you can give us your thoughts. It's always good to hear your point of view, and then the commissioners we can all chime in.
Well, I saw this before our meeting, which was a week and a half ago on Friday, and I thought it was interesting, and I think that the design is cohesive. I think the fenestration is interesting. When I showed it to other people within the office, their reaction was, it looks great, but I'm not sure if it's right for Church Circle. And I don't really want to prejudice the discussion with other opinions, but that was the reaction. The fenestration was strong. There wasn't a negative reaction to removing what I would call the neo mansard, which really served the purpose. I think that the third story element is an interesting addition, and really it just comes down to the fenestration. I'm not really sure that the covered canopy on Church Circle is necessary, because I'm really hoping that people do not get out of their cars there, stop the traffic, the way they would for the cash machine. That was always an interesting screw up for drivers. But overall, within context, I think it fits. Does the cornice create a false sense of history? Possibly. But it's a transformation of what I describe as a brick brutalist building into a more traditional form, and it works with it works in context with the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so maybe we can separate the discussion a little bit. There's the major component I think that is being requested is an addition of additional floor space on the top floor. So we can address that as one issue. The fenestration is a complete change from existing, but it is, well, it doesn't contribute. The existing fenestration doesn't contribute, so we can talk about that. And then the detailing around the cornice is the third thing, John, that you mentioned. So I'd be interested, maybe if other commissioners weigh in on the feasibility of those three items. The guidelines that we're talking about here, I think some of them are already addressed in terms of the presentation didn't necessarily go into the floor area ratio, but I believe that the heights are fine and the floor ratio apparently are good. I mean, we're good there, so I don't think those are issues. So we would just get into the contributing nature of the building, views from around it, what those are the major guidelines we're going to be looking at. Then just to tee up the conversation, the building is probably not compliant right now in terms of fenestration, in terms of the amount of glass. So we have an existing building that we're transforming. I don't think we have another example where we've taken away existing glass in order to comply with our 33% of the facade being the maximum amount of glass. So those are all kind of thoughts that we should discuss. So who wants to talk first? Go ahead, Will.
Thank you. Well, as usual, Leo has taken Sal's ear and now he made it into a silk purse. Actually, I kind of like the building. It's so ugly and obtrusive that it has an endearing quality to it. But truly, Leo, it's such a big building and it's so different from everything around it. I'm surprised that your design has the effect of actually making it more compact and less obtrusive. So I think it's entirely feasible. And my only additional comment would be the big blank wall right there in this view that's dead ahead on South Street. I mean, that's a lot of, especially in your improved new design, that's a lot of blank brick wall. So maybe there's something you could do with it. And on the fenestration, tremendous improvement in my opinion. maybe you could just sort of think like Louis Sullivan, who had to take big plate glass and find some way. I don't mean to imitate, obviously, and create a false sense of history, but he was able to break up those big glass shop windows and do it in an interesting way. And I think you can probably do the same.
Yeah, I think your point's well taken. We can, it's a bit of a struggle because, we've got these big openings. And,
Yeah.
The easy way to do it is to fill it in and break the windows up. But I think there might be another layer, if you will, between the masonry frame that we have and the infill components.
Yeah.
Maybe there's another layer that gets in there that breaks up those metal and glass components within that frame and introduces, like a secondary frame in there. Right
Yeah,
now, there's black components between the windows, but perhaps we should look at a couple options for that before we commit to this. And
Yeah.
I think your point's well taken too about, that big blank wall. I'm not sure why that was there, other than perhaps there were some functional pieces on the inside at one point. I was thinking about adding more windows there, but again, it seemed like I'm moving further away from that 33, but I'm not so sure that serves us. So we should certainly look at that and see what can be done there as well.
Yeah, once we add more windows, we start running up against that 33%.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting opening it up for windows. I'm just suggesting that Leo think about some other, thinking about a new entrance at that point instead of where one of the current entrances on the circle is. Something that's the kind of thing that I mean, so that it becomes something that has a meaningful purpose and breaks up that expansive brick.
So
Yeah, or even like recessed panels in there that would kind of, continue the frame assembly, but in a different way. It could just be a recessed panel with something else in it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Can I
a
ask
classical architect would put a couple of sculptures in niches.
How much of this brickwork is repurposed or reused, and how much is just going to be reused?
Well, the majority of the masonry we'd like to keep.
That's what I thought. I was assuming that. So
Yeah. I mean, that surface, I think if we cleaned it and I think we can adjust the color a little bit. Sounds crazy, but it's a little darker than I believe it was when it was originally built. I think it could be lightened up a little bit, and it might even be repointed with a different mortar to help soften it. So something that's a little bit less, kind of monochromatic. So we're gonna have to do a couple tests to see if we can get that to work.
Okay. I saw Bobby have your hand up, and then John.
Yeah, Leo, did you consider other colors besides the black for the windows? I mean, several of the other examples that you've shown us in other buildings and on Main Street have a white or a cream window. It just, maybe that would make it a little softer than the black. I like black windows, but I'm just wondering if in this particular case, something other than black might kind of soften things up a little.
Yeah, and again, it's another really good thought. I mean, we default to the black because I can buy it, right? But you think about it, I'm always a little worried about it because it's a strong contrast, and even if you were to soften it to like a medium gray would be different. And the same with the top piece too. I think all of those pieces could, like right now it's pretty jarring, and so I'd like to look at some other options for that. And maybe the top piece doesn't have to be directly matching the windows. That could go to a really light gray, let's say, where it really starts to fade away and become less of a prominent element. And then I don't like the white windows. The cream could work, but I think you want to stay away from the lighter ones, just because it is such a contrast from the form of the building. But I do think we should be looking at some other color selections for that, because there's probably a better choice than just the black.
John, did you have your hand up?
So Jackie is experiencing technical difficulties. So I have a few things to relay from her, if that's okay.
Of course.
Okay. So First of all, and Leo, you and your team, your excellent team, may already be aware that the FAR here is 2. So I don't know if you are within that with the addition of the 3rd floor, if it's already at FAR 2. So
I
that
saw
was-
in our packet that they included the math for that. Did I not? Leo, in our drive packet, I thought I saw the math calculated in there.
Yeah, we're pretty confident that we're.
It wasn't shown tonight, but
Yeah, I told my guys to pull it out because I didn't think that would be part of the discussion, but we'll have to double
it's not
check.
necessarily part of ours, but you're right.
well,
But Jackie raises a good point, though. We have to make sure that we're in compliance there. We believe that we are, but especially with all of the space that's given up on the 1st floor that's under the building. It's interesting. There's a couple notches in here that help out a little bit, but we'll certainly confirm that and make sure that we're within compliance.
Okay, and then she had the next one, and I know that you put up one slide that had heights. So does this conform to 2838?
It does. It does. Now, we had discussion about it at the office today. The real key is where that cornice strike is, and then how far back that brick piece above it is. Our initial concept had it further forward, but if we pull it back, we think that strike of the 45, that handrail, if you will comply, and then the top piece does comply. So we think we're going to hit those numbers.
And just a point of clarification. So for those who aren't familiar or especially familiar with the building, I think everybody's walked by it a number of times. The ADA ramp is closer to Church Circle. And I think you only need the one for this property. Is that correct?
We think so. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so that was just a point of clarification that Jackie had asked about. And then here's my own comment. I think a gray window might work here. Something that's lighter. I'd be interested in seeing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I even thought about green, and so I drew it in green and hated it. So
yeah,
that's why I
we're
came
looking
to
for
the gray.
context in the neighborhood. You don't see green anywhere.
Yeah, there's a few on West Street, I think. I think there's a little bit of gray over there. There might even be at Ford Church. There might be a little bit of green in there.
A storefront system, a new storefront system like this is probably, you're going to want to look for examples.
Yeah.
In newer buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And then one other thing you had mentioned, Leo, the mortar. The mortar is a kind of pink, and I know this because there have been recent repairs. So it's not a dark pink, but it's pink. And if the building were repointed, it would really change its character pretty dramatically, I think. But it's an unusual mortar color if you really look at it.
It creates a more solid mass, is what it does.
Yeah.
Like,
Definitely.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, what we're trying to figure out is how complicated is it? Because we have a good number of repairs to do anyway, like the spandrel panels are cracked and there's some diagonal cracks that have been repaired poorly. So we're going to be doing at least some of it. And the hope is that we can maybe go a little further and repoint it all. Of course, it all comes down to numbers, but I do want to look at that and see if it's possible.
yeah. Okay, Bill.
A couple questions. In a couple of your elevations, you show what looked like a tower. It's just a grade box above the new living floor. It's to the back section of it with no real delineation as to what it was or how it's.
Andrew, is there a way to look at that?
It was in your elevations.
Yeah, it's the elevator overrun.
That's what I assumed, but it does set up a fair height. And my concern here is, given its position, if you're looking up South
There
Street,
it is.
which I admit, not many people look up South Street, they all drive down it.
Yeah, but pedestrians walk up it.
What is it going to look like? Because right now we have no design. At the same time, with the distance view that we have from down by the West Street intersection at Church looking back, is the sight line really going to allow that to be hidden, or is that going to be popping up? And it might be worthy of doing a site section opposed to a perspective to show how the sight line from eye level would either hide or reveal that tower. So looking at design, looking at sight lines related to that to try to keep it hidden, because
Yeah,
that is a definite increase on the building.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, what I normally see is a 4-foot overrun from the, is essentially that piece has to stop 12 feet above the floor below for the lifting mechanism and all of the other reasons we know about. I think it's shown a little taller than it needs to be here, just graphically. But again, it's something we got to make sure we have our arms around and everyone's in agreement with. I think I can have some pieces that go above, but this one is pretty big in this drawing. I do believe that we can position it because the elevator is not in the building right now. It's an ad. I don't know how they got approved for second floor office space without an elevator, but they did. So we'll have to add one, but we'll take a closer look at that and see if we can come up with something a little bit more successful and take a look at that.
Yeah, with that in mind, the second floor addition, I am looking at, it looks like you pretty much have a flat roof right out to the edge of the cornice. You basically have a drip edge, or not drip edge, but a small edge. You don't really have a parapet. So anything on that red roof within, say, 5 foot may be visible. Of any height, it starts getting more critical. So we have no hidden equipment up there except your well.
Yeah, if we go back to the roof plan, can you go back to that for me, Andrew?
I do know you have the well back there.
Yeah, so we believe I can fit
successful.
everything in there. We specifically arranged it this way for 2 reasons. One, to hide the equipment, and 2 is to maintain the FAR that we're permitted to have.
Yes, and I do recognize that. I'm just wondering about the roof to ceiling thickness, handling all whatever equipment and structure you have in there as well.
Right, right.
So that could push things up. So I know I'm being picky. I want to know exactly what the structural loads are, and you haven't even designed it yet.
Well, we're going to be working on that. I think we're going to go with light gauge steel for, bar joists to do that upper level roof, which I think I can reduce to, maybe 12 or 14 inches, but you got insulation and all kinds of other stuff to get in there. So we'll have to take a close look at that and make sure that we can stay in compliance. There is a really tall HVAC component on the 3rd floor now. I'm going to say it's probably 12 feet above the floor deck already that you just can't see it. So.
Punching up, and that's good. But this picture, or this, drawing, if you come down South Street and you're looking back, you see where your elevator is right next to your stair.
Yeah.
That is the concern, that's going to really show there, even if you're looking straight in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's also notched back there for the parking entrance.
Maybe it's a really, really big chimney.
Might be.
It's still, we'll have to have a discussion about keeping that within the 38 feet too. There is a allowance for 2.5 feet above that for accessory structures, but that's it. So we'll have to take a detailed look at that when in the final design.
Yeah, the new elevators have the, there's no one's using hydraulic elevators anymore, which used to be the choice for buildings that were under 3 or 4 stories. And so now the high efficiency elevators that grab the energy from the elevator dropping all happen in a mechanism in one of the walls. So I'm not sure I need the full 12 feet above the last stop. So that's something that we'll have to look at on our team.
The machine room-less ones, which I believe is what you're referring to.
Yes.
I'm using one right now. I think it only has about a 6-foot overrun.
Yeah. I mean, it's still not a small number, but certainly something we can look at when you think about the elevator doesn't need to be 10 feet inside. It could be an 8-foot car, and then you might have what you need.
Yeah. And one suggestion on the large window sections we have, or elevations we have on the building.
Yeah, let's go back to that last slide, Andrew.
It's just a thought. I have not necessarily a good one, but you have a horizontal member in there that in your system that looks like it represents something of that light shelf thing I think they had before. And then you're dividing it, looks like in half and in thirds with another larger member. It would might help break up those systems is the actual glass area is a slightly different, has slightly different color mullion system. And those two larger members are either a lighter or slightly darker. So it looks like you have a breakup of the systems. You end up with a second screen, if you would.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's that layering thing that we were thinking about trying to investigate, where you've got, you know, the secondary frame, if you will, that sits in there, and then the windows might be slightly different that sit back just a little bit further, which.
Correct, but I'm thinking you might be able to do it with just color.
That's true too. That's true too.
And the guideline here again is breaking down large expanses of any masonry or any wall structure. Breaking down the mass is one of our guidelines. That we talked about. Yeah. Leslie had a comment.
Yeah. So, I really love the massing, and I love the design, but I kind of have this industrial feeling, like a warehouse with all the fenestration. So the other thing was, you know, I love how it almost feels like it's even more open at the bottom where you walk through. I can't remember how much, you know, ceiling height you had there, but I kind of wonder what the lighting is going to be like in the evenings with all those windows. Just a curiosity.
Yeah, another good question. I mean, I'm not even sure that I can make that top panel of glass I show on that lower level glass. I have to get in there and look at the ceilings again and what we're going to have available to us. They might even be spandrel panels. And at that point, you wonder, well, maybe that top piece isn't glass up there, and drop the glass down a little bit rather than going tight to the underside of the overhang. So that's an option there too. And yeah, I think that's a good point.
So Leslie, I'm hearing what you're saying is that an industrial look here isn't what we would typically see in a downtown area. This almost looks like it would be in a loft type industrial look.
Exactly, like Baltimore, maybe.
Yeah. Like a repurposed industrial building. And Leo, maybe one idea there you're hitting on it is maybe some spandrel panels to reduce that.
Yeah, it's a real challenge. I mean, you know, we have that same concern. You know, are you trying to make this look like it's a repurposed industrial building, which it's not?
It's not.
And then thinking about, well, you know, that's really, frankly, the biggest challenge with this. I think the rest of it is pretty straightforward. You know, surely we can talk about some of the other details, but getting that fenestration balance right with, you know, I mean, you don't want to make more glass there. But you do want to make it feel cohesive. So I think we're going to be spending the next couple of weeks studying that a little bit closely.
Bunches of alternatives. Kim, you have your hand up.
Yeah. I guess I have an opinion on the glass as well, because everybody does. I sort of definitely see this as a layered effect. I mean, a lot of the form, we know the form isn't historic, but you've put, you know, small planes on the upper the residential portion, and you have, you know, sort of a medium-sized pane. I think that possibly the lowest level should be looking more like a traditional storefront. You know, a large window, or a larger window with, I think the top panels are fine, but I think they should be less divided to provide more of a storefront window effect on the street that would be more consistent with our historic area, but not take away from the you know, not so historic structure of this. The second floor is signaling to me that it's office space. And the third floor is signaling to me it's residential space, but the first floor is confused.
Yeah, I concur with that. Traditional storefronts were larger, I mean, storefronts in the area are larger panes of glass. And that might be something to consider, Leo, to bring it a little more into its neighboring, and then you don't have to have the same treatment on the second floor as the first floor either. It's frequent that those are two different treatments.
Right, good point. Well, maybe when we come back to you, look, this is a pretty big deal. So
Yeah.
we'll probably come back to you for another work session and maybe
Sure.
have a couple of studies of those things, and maybe see we can reach consensus on what is the most appropriate approach for it. So I think the task for us is
All
to
right.
go back and study that a little more carefully. I'm getting the sense that we're not far off, but certainly we need to develop this a bit more to make sure we're making good decisions. So really appreciate the comments from everyone.
Yeah, I think we're going around the horn, and I concur with pretty much everything that's been said. So I can probably go to summary. It would appear that the removal of the existing mansard roof is no issue from a demolition point of view, and if the FAR component is in play, is complied with, and the heights are complied with within District 2, Height District 2, then the addition of the 2 units on the top appears to be compliant. It doesn't have an adverse impact on the streetscape. It doesn't come to the edge. We talked about the rail a little bit, the cornice on the top there, and how it's treated, which would be effectively the railing for terraces for residential use at the top. That forms the cornice on the top. Keeping the simple cornice, so the dish, taking away the panels and adding these new cornices, as long as the detailing is simple, not to be overly complicated, so there's no false sense of history, will be important. We didn't talk about that too much, but I think we'll always be commenting on that. Then finally, the refenestration of the existing window openings, apertures, is the major discussion item. And right now, the sense of the commission is that it isn't quite there. Not only the color, but also the number of muttons and detail might not be the final decision, and it might not really fit any adjacent buildings in the Church Circle or West Street, Main Street area. So I think you've already agreed that more work needs to be done on that aspect. We also talked a little bit about repointing and possibly changing the color of the grout, or that might actually break the scale of the building down also, which I think would be a move in the right direction as well. Breaking the scale down in this building is what the desired effect is, and I think it's getting there. So is that John? Yes.
Well, a couple of comments from Jackie. I just want to convey them at this point. Jackie said, and of course these are zoning review issues. She'd like to see a property survey based on the actual property description in the 1969 deed. Also, you may need a variance for the third floor addition, and the project will require minor site design review. And that's probably all things that you'd already thought of.
Yeah. That's a good point. We're a full service shop here, so we're helping kill many birds with one stone during our pre-applications, which I think is a good use of everyone's time. One other design item that we want to be very clear about is the utility structure that may go above the height of 38 feet to accommodate the elevator. That's going to have to be very detailed. And we'll have to look closely at the guidelines regarding that height. And views from the street level are helpful, always. This view we're looking at right now is pretty close to street level view. So right now we don't see that little elevator tower bumping up, but I bet if you use that fun software that you have that you can rotate things around, we could see it a little better.
Well, that's why we picked this view, John.
Also, the other thing we didn't talk too much about tonight was the actual material on this penthouse. Is it metal clad, or that's what you've used in other instances? So we just would like some more detail on that as well.
Sure. Well, I'm always disappointed when I can't hear directly from Jackie of the things I've overlooked. So I'm a little
Don't worry, you will.
Oh, yeah, don't worry yourself about that.
Don't worry about that.
Yeah, as we all know, there's more than one bite at the apple here. So
Yes, there is.
She'll find time.
And we're very happy to have you come back. This is an exciting project, I think. Fellow commissioners, did I summarize adequately? Accurately?
Well done.
Okay.
Great. Well, thanks so much for your time, you guys. Tried to move through it pretty quickly. I think it was really constructive discussion, and you've given us a lot to think about, and we'll get to work on it and let our client know what we're hearing, and then come back and see if we can, work towards getting this to the point where we're all happy with it. So thanks again for your time and attention.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Next on our agenda is the Burtis House. So if Madeline, you could promote the members of that team. I'm not sure who is here.
They should be on in a second.
There's Laura. See Laura and Melanie. Hello.
Good evening. Hi there. We're getting here.
Oh, well.
Tim, I thought we had finished with the Burtis House. What are we talking about tonight?
Well, I can see some things that make me a little happier. They've actually complied with some of our changes, the requested changes. So we're looking at another pre-app at this point.
Yes, thank you. Melanie Hartwig Davis with HD Squared
Did I answer your
Architects.
question? Will, we weren't past
Yes.
that yet.
Sorry.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. It is good to be back. It has been a few months, and we've had a number of meetings with our stakeholders. So we are ready to share with you again. I'll do a quick high-level review of some of the scope of this project, and then we'll get into the changes that we have made based on these stakeholder meetings, and go from there. So let's see, screen sharing. I have too many screens up. Hold on just 1 second. I'm gonna just do this real quick. Here we go. Is anybody seeing the screen yet?
Nope.
All right, we're in there. Okay.
There it is.
There we go. Okay. So here we have the architectural site plan, and just as a reminder, we have the Burtis House, and we are removing the non-conforming portions here as a side porch and the rear addition that was done many years ago. This shows the fence line here for construction, as well as ultimately a security fence once that construction is complete, and it is awaiting phase 2. We are here to talk about phase 1. A couple of reminders. The existing floor elevation is at 3.14, and we are going to be raising it about less than 5.5 feet here to an elevation of 8.5, give or take. Then ultimately I am not showing any of the quote unquote master plan or the long view, long vision tonight, as we are focused on the first stabilization phase 1. What you might notice differently on this in this section here is that we are have moved it to a pier foundation. So there was some talk about having a basement, and there's definitely a desire within the administration and the city to have some storage, but I think we can meet some storage requests along with a pier foundation. So
Yeah, and that was one of our suggestions in the last discussion, so we are all on board with that one.
great. So to give you the vision of that here in this rendering, we have the brick piers and then the framed infill between with panels. The storage that I'm mentioning is primarily indicated right now along the alleyway with secured storage for things like tables, chairs, kayaks, just as a functional waterfront, things that might be pulled out, weather and activity appropriate. But so the other things to notice in this perspective are the ventilation here and the pattern in the windows that we have discussed previously along the front here. And then I think I should let probably Laura talk a little bit about our revised proposal here for the removed areas that we talked about, different kind of murals, if you will. And now at this point, Laura and Preservation Maryland, Laura, would you like to tell them about your vision for that?
Yes, so I believe this would be a separate application process, but what we would propose then is to apply trompe l'oeil here and create a facade that would show what the building restored would look like, but a faux, facade, what it would look like restored until it can actually be restored, and either follow the preservation brief with painting the wood there, or perhaps have a sort of scaffolding scrim material that would create that illusion. But that's what we're thinking right now, rather than a mural or something that would interrupt the that elevation.
So let me just to clarify, it right now would appear that you're putting either German siding or clapboard there, but what you're saying is it's going to be a painted flat surface that has texture or appears. Faux is probably not a good word to use.
Yeah, trompe l'oeil.
Before what we were looking at was just completely blank. You're saying it's going to be textured or painted in a way that is decorative.
Yes.
Okay. And that applies to this panel and then the one on the city dock side as well.
That's correct. Both elevations that have those pieces demoed, those additions demoed.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay.
This view also shows that the fenestration and the venting would happen in more of the windows on the backside than the front.
And what is the material? I can't read it necessarily. What's the material between the piers?
Oh, this is the wood lattice.
Lattice.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's something that we look to or anticipate some feedback. I can show just some quick images from around the circle and other examples because we obviously have different painted and different directions. We have the diagonal, some in better condition than others, but just again to show some that's around. And so we have a horizontal here. You guys are probably familiar with some of these. And then if we come to the renderings, we're right now showing it in the white in between the brick, open to conversations about that color. But that's what we've got shown in these renderings. So we have there the historic facade. And then if we come up here, we have the waterfront facade. And then of course, ultimately that won't be very visible during the transition phase as it waits for its phase 2, because again, in a separate permit application, there will be the storyboard on the fence line that you see here in these renderings. But just to illustrate what would be behind the fence line, And then ultimately different permit, but the storyboard. So are there any questions so far on that? And I do see one hand up.
Well, actually, Kim's hand was up before.
Oh,
I'm not sure
okay.
she took it down. Kim, did you
Okay.
have a question or comment?
I've took my hand down.
All right, good enough.
Yeah, my only question was, it's not a real question, it's just, it seemed that the coloration of the lattice below should be a little darker, which is sort of traditional, but give it more of a base.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. Some of those photographs you showed have with the darker green, black probably would be a more conventional treatment.
Yep. I agree.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to, one thing I want to get real clear. We've had a lot of discussions recently about the base flood elevation, and I'm not sure we've really solved this issue, but on one of your first drawings, you showed the base flood elevation for this section at 5, and I'm pretty sure it's 4. The National Flood Elevation Zone AE, the maps that I looked at, because we have a separate discussion going on about City Dock, is at 4. So, and then.
Okay, that may be mislabeled, but
Yeah, we
plus
just
the
want to
2
be
feet
sure
for
about that. That would
freeboard.
actually take a foot off of this, and then you're raising it 2 feet above that for freeboard, which is in discussion, but that is, that's conventional. And then you've actually added 1.5 feet above that. Is that to provide headroom for storage? Is that what you're going for there?
That's actually ultimately to provide the for the current plan is still, even though I don't want to talk about the second phase 2,
Yeah,
is
I
to
know.
still bring the grade up around the building.
Yes, of course.
At least in some of the portions of the building. So some areas of the building. So the idea is to bring the grade up to probably towards the back where phase 2 addition will happen to around 6 foot, at 6.5 feet, and then kind of come to 7 feet. And then the idea is that the porch, the existing porch, will step up to the grade to the finished floor level of the 8.5.
I follow you. You're actually saying you're actually creating a foundation level of about 1.5 feet. I understand.
Correct.
Okay, that's tracking the grade. You would typically have a grade and then a foundation of 1.5 feet or so. Okay, I'm following that now.
Okay.
All right, so we'll get more clarification on the actual 5 versus 4, but I'm pretty sure it's 4.
Yeah, no problem. We'll double check. We'll get
Because
that
we
corrected.
have separate discussions going on in terms of code on that. Okay. Thoughts from John or other commissioners?
Well, I'm happy to start. I think that this is a great alternative. I think it reduces the visual mass.
Yeah.
By taking out some of the additional foundation brick, and Melanie was nice enough to have me over and show me these the design idea, and I've always thought this was a good approach anyway, and traditional too, especially for a waterman at City Dock. If he were experiencing flooding, he might just do this. So
exactly.
Good choice. Thank you.
2 thumbs up.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Other commissioners, comments, thoughts? How about your thoughts on the treatment of the blank spaces with painted surface that may or may not be a trompe l'oeil? I think it's creative myself. It was just plain old blank before, so now you're doing something with it. So we were okay with the plain old blank. So I think feasibility of this will be interesting, and it could be repurposed for other things as well.
I think it's a clever alternative.
I agree.
But of course, you could have the Sistine Chapel in there too. So we'll see what happens.
Yes, and it could be a mural. I mean, honestly, it could be incorporated with the storyboards for future purposes, but it as a way to get this approved and done, and with construction drawings, I think this is a feasible solution also for that. It probably will be covered eventually with an additional as we learn more about the eventual phase 2 anyway. So it's temporary, I would imagine. Yeah, Bill.
Yeah, I'm curious, I haven't, I gotta go back and look at some older photos. What was in those panels originally? I suspect there might have been windows in those areas in some way.
Yeah.
That might be either ghosted in or given a suggestion of the history that was part of that building.
That'd be a good question. That would,
This-
in the Trump law, you might want to get some research on what was there and use that.
Yeah, this particular facade had a side entrance, so there was a door here where you see these arrows, and then there
Mhm.
was at least one window there.
Yeah.
So that's absolutely an opportunity to
Great idea.
consider.
It gives it a little more history, if you would.
And then put a
meat.
creepy silhouette in there.
All right.
Just a waterman silhouette. Creepy enough.
I see a pipe in that,
I do too, yeah.
a smoking pipe.
With a Greek fisherman's hat.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think it's creative and I appreciate, I agree with that. Okay. Leslie, any thoughts?
Not at the moment. I mean, I'm interested to see what the panels are going to eventually
Yeah.
look like. And I think that the lattice at the bottom is genius. It's works really well.
Yeah.
I like it. And the brick piers, great.
Yeah.
Nice work.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and again, this is phase 1. So I'll begin to summarize, but this is a phase 1 solution, which we might be living with for a while. Hopefully not too long, but it will be surrounded with interpretive panels. We will anticipate that when the design for City Dock is complete, we will understand what the level is and how that will meet this building. It will probably conceal some of the piers here and bring the building from a mass point of view down a little bit. We just don't know that section yet. We look forward to that, seeing that, but that's phase 2. So at this point, again, the changes that are being presented continue the prior discussions of understanding the window venting is more clear now, and I think you provided what we had asked for was an inventory of the existing windows and what was happening with those. So we appreciate that. The brick piers and the infill of lattice or wooden material of a pattern yet to be determined, but the choices you showed us all, I think, would be feasible. Preferred not to be the angled one, because that is one that is specifically not typically not of the era. So that the brick piers and the lattice treatment around the foundation is a step in the right direction in terms of breaking down the mass of the structure. And the painting treatment of the blank spaces is now further developed as well. And also it appears to be feasible in terms of our guidelines. And then I think that's it. Actually, we as we said before, there'll be future discussions of murals and in other applications. So,
Tim, can I just ask one question?
of course, you're back.
I was okay. So I don't know what the schedule is for this, but it looks like it's ready to come in for minor site design and critical area approval. It does have to go to the Critical Area Commission for approval. So, and both of those things need to be completed before it can be scheduled for public hearing before the Preservation Commission. So I'm sure Melanie is already aware of this. She's been meeting with Kim about critical areas, but I would encourage them to get that phase started so that depending on what their schedule is for.
Good point.
Looks really good.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Thank you. Thank you. We will try to keep marching forward now. I don't think we have any other speed bumps.
Good. All right. I think you made a lot of progress. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. That's it, I guess, for this one for night.
Well, I have one item to share.
On this topic, I mean, we're going
No,
on
different topic.
Okay, we're done with this
Right.
pre-app. That's all.
May
I'm
I
saying.
just say thank you, everyone, tremendously for your input.
right.
And
Yes,
giving us
thank
this
you.
opportunity to share.
Yep. Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Good night all.
All right, yeah, John, we have other business and administrative information that will share. So John, you can go first, and then I will follow up with the discussion about our action report on the proposed ordinance.
Okay, so well, actually, it was about the ordinance. So why don't you go into that, and then you could finish with our request for the pre-application.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Yeah, so in our previous discussions on the ordinance 01523, which had to do with the building height reset at the base level elevation, Ellie Tierney proposed two amendments, one which changed the wording having to do with referring to city dock and had it apply to anything in the AE zone throughout the city, which is just a logical thing to do. Then the other just changed the wording so that we talk about the correct term, base level elevation, which they did not use. They were using a different term. And so those two proposals were made. And then I didn't share with you, but with the way that this proceeds is on the basis of our last meeting, I filled out a referral action report on for the commission that was favorable towards this ordinance with the amendments that I just talked about. So I forwarded that to Kaylin Jackson at the city council, and so that's in the record. The ordinance is being reviewed at Rules this Friday. That was it 2 Fridays. It's the 19th. And I'm not sure it's 1 o'clock or 3 o'clock, but it is in person, and Bobby thinks she can go to that too, and Leslie indicated an interest as well. We all don't need to go. In fact, we shouldn't all go. We shouldn't ever meet together. But just to answer questions, this is very straightforward. 2 minor amendments to a technicality in terms of the changing the height that I don't think should be controversial. So that's where that stands right now. Any questions about that?
No.
Okay, great. The other topic that John brought up, we just mentioned it, interested to get more information about the progress of city dock design. And on your behalf, I'd like to prompt Eileen Fogarty to bring to another pre-application. We really have not had a pre-application yet. We've had joint meetings with review with Planning Commission, but we need to move this process. We want to move this process forward, be cooperative. So a pre-application should be scheduled as soon as possible. Because we haven't talked to them since the beginning of February.
I will send an email with that information.
Okay. And we're happy to make time in any of our scheduled meetings. But at this point, I think we need to go to pre-application. We don't need to have another joint meeting. And it will illuminate. Well, we just need to see the details what they're doing. There's several moving parts. We know that the project had 5 or 6 different sections. Some of the drawings that have been publicly shown at the Ward 1 meeting have a completely different design for a visitor center that we have not seen in any prior meetings, but now they're public. Those drawings have been seen by the public, but we haven't seen them. So we would like to make a comment on them. All right. Any other, so that makes sense to everybody?
Yeah, but Tim,
Yeah.
can I just suggest that, because I think at this point, I think if this is going to be a phased project, it would be really helpful if they would define what the phases are. We would require that for Site Design and Planning Commission, but I think it will help to understand a little bit. I think it's time that everybody sees what the phasing is.
Yeah, I agree.
And ask to have that clearly delineated, John.
Yeah, I for instance, there are 2 major design components. One are how the flooding is handled, and how this plaza is constructed, and the heights of all of those things. That's one big phase. All that has to happen first before any construction. The other part is what are the buildings around this space. So there's at least 2 major phases that I can think of.
Yeah, so if they're raising the height of the whole city dock by a few feet. I mean, that whole Susan Campbell Park. I mean, I think it would be helpful to really understand programmatically, what happens to the other uses that utilize that space currently. I mean, even like the tour boats and everything, is that all going to be, I think that's kind of information that's helpful to have. I mean, I think at some
Completely.
point we got that with Hillman to understand how it was going to impact adjacent uses of the city dock,
Yes,
and became, even after, when Hillman started construction, there were still some unresolved concerns, weren't there, John?
yeah,
There were, and design continues.
Yeah.
even to this point.
yeah.
Yeah,
And those uses really are probably, the planning commission will be wanting to know those uses for
Oh,
sure.
yeah, absolutely. But I think in the whole context of it, it's,
Absolutely.
it really helps to understand the project better. I mean, I think we would be particularly concerned about how what they're proposing on the Compromise Street side relates to the existing buildings along that side, and how it impacts the buildings along Dock Street.
Absolutely. Yeah, Will?
that, Ms. Fogarty, of course, is a well-experienced professional and knows all of these things, and it doesn't hurt to remind her of these things, but I don't think we really need to make our effort in that direction. If you want to hear more about where things really are, you have to communicate to the administration. And these are all good points, but some of them are outside the scope of this commission.
Correct.
And I think that we're going to have our hands full with what is within our scope.
Yes, the design
So-
components are the things that we need.
Yeah, so let's not go, I mean, Jackie, I
Well,
respect you
okay,
greatly.
Right. With all
But-
due respect, Will,
But-
phasing is something you all approve, because the phasing of project.
No, I agree with phasing. I agree with
It's the
phasing.
uses. I think you're talking about the
What it's
uses.
going to do to the other businesses
Yeah. The uses.
is, and I'll
Okay.
just be myself,
Fair
it's not in our lane.
Yeah,
It-
that's,
you
I
know,
agree. That's what I was
are
referring to.
concerned as citizens, but we can't hold anybody's feet to the fire. We can't tell them. that they
That's
can
really
do
the
this
planning
or Not
commission's.
do that.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Planning commission that's their job. That's their lane. And you're right. I mean, we can reach out to really the sponsor of this within the administration is Public
Yeah.
Works. Public Works is, so David Jarrell, who we know is leaving soon. I don't know when, but John, you should copy David and
Yeah.
And I would assume that they're going to be assigning someone new to manage the project in Public Works.
I assume so.
since
I'd be
you-
surprised. I've always thought that they would hire an outside team that would be more construction than design oriented. I mean, this is beyond this. Public Works has to know every pipe and every drain and all of that, but this is beyond the scope of our
Well,
Public
but
Works
But
department.
you still would have somebody within that department who was managing
Who's sponsor?
No.
the outside teams.
Public Works is absolutely involved with every
Yeah.
detail of the
Right.
Sure.
garage, and they will be with this construction
Right.
too.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is an outside consultant / project manager who would work within and respond to the head of the Department of Public Works.
To my knowledge, Bryce Perkins is still the head of the master planning design on this.
Bryce Turner.
Bryce Turner.
Yeah.
Bryce Perkins is our quarterback in Virginia.
And aren't they also looking at architects to work with as consultants on it?
They are, but I think if we just focus on getting them to
Yeah.
our next meeting, if we focus on David Jarrell and Bryce Perkins and Eileen,
Right.
all of them, one of them will come.
Bryce Turner.
Bryce Turner, sorry.
Yeah.
All right. Yes, John, if you,
John will take care of all of this.
absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
John's the man.
Any other business?
And John, you have an exciting career between now and retirement.
Oh, my goodness.
Guaranteed.
Exciting?
It's only a couple of months away.
That's right.
Oh,
No way.
Yep,
What?
yep. Sometime this summer,
You're gonna ride into the sunset this
I'm
summer?
riding into the sunset. Yep.
I'm not getting any feedback here visually or verbally, John.
Are you looking? you're
John
looking
is
to me?
thrilled.
I'm looking, huh?
John's thrilled.
I'm committed. You know me. I'm committed.
You
Well,
are.
Fully committed.
We need,
We're
You're
gonna
not
hire
committed,
some-
you should be.
Right,
we
there,
need continuity here.
yes. Can I just mention that we had a celebration of life on Sunday,
Oh,
Kevin Scott, and it was a really lovely affair. And the mayor came and he made remarks. And one of the things that was really heartening about it is that, you know, Kevin came to work for the city 22 years ago when Eileen was director. So Eileen, John Arison, Pete Gottwald, Sally Nash, all
Wow.
4 of the directors that he worked with, you know, all the directors that he had worked for came, with the exception of Mr. Laplace, who lives in New Jersey, came to the celebration. And I thought that that was a real tribute to, you know,
Yeah.
what an integral part of our team that
Yeah.
Kevin was, and how much of a
Absolutely
member of
was.
our planning and zoning family. So,
thanks for bringing that up.
yeah.
Okay. He'll be missed, that's for sure.
He will be missed.
Move to adjourn.
And yes,
Second?
all in favor?
All right.